What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, giving you guys the summary rundown of Live Letter 69. This is going over part 1 of patch 6.1, scheduled right now for mid-April, which you could kind of think of maybe April 12th or the 19th as a target date for this update. Obviously, when we get an official date, we'll be sure to bring you guys the news. Chris and I covered it bright and early. And this is going back to form. It's been 11 months since we've had a live letter that didn't run 7 hours. And so I can say hands down, bravo.
I miss these. I mean, it's nice to have it in English, but like, it's also nice to have it done in like 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So let's go ahead and just start giving you guys the information and let's have some fun. Chris, first and foremost, what do you think about the new name, the name for patch 6.1?
I think we had like a prediction chat in stream one day, and they said it would be something like a new adventure or something begins, a very callback to kind of like it's going to be something relatively vague and just about like just starting out again or starting over or something like that. So it's right on brand. It's nothing like ominous or anything like that. Yeah, it seems nice.
Yeah. I'm pleased with it. I think the patch artwork is also incredibly reminiscent, going all the way from 1.0 all the way through the various jobs the Warrior of Light has been featured as a part of the various different cutscenes. So, and I do like kind of essentially a little bit of a hopeful smirk in terms of their next adventure. What are we going to go find in this and all? So first and foremost, guys, we're going to be using the fans translation from Reddit. You can go check this out obviously for yourself. We'll include the link to the Reddit in the description of this video, and thank you guys so much for the incredible community that sits back and puts these together so we can bring you guys the information as quickly as possible. What we like to do is provide a lot of context with what, like when I calculated it, we've got over 20 years of experience combined with Final Fantasy XIV and covering this game. So I think we have a lot of different insight and different kind of viewpoints that we approach it from. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Chris, why don't you let's start taking us through it.
Okay, so for anybody that has not been through a live letter like this, because it's been a while, these are in Japanese only. So what Brian is showing is the wonderful translators from the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit community that make this possible for all of us that don't speak Japanese to see these. Usually there are 2 parts per patch, part 1 and part 2. Part 2 is where you see all the gameplay and all that. It used to be where like job changes are. That will not be the case. And part 2 is 2 weeks out from the patch. They did not tell us when part 2 live letter is because they know that means we can figure out when the patch is. In a 0.1 patch, we do get new main scenario. We do get the extreme version of the final trial of the main scenario. But this time around, we're getting a little bit of other stuff as well. So we are going to be, they show Tataru here, we're going to be getting a new side quest series called Tataru's Grand Endeavor. We don't really know what that is. Sidian wanted to do a treasure map with us. They had a good time with this. They had a good laugh. They laughed a lot, and it was still done in like 2.5 hours. So they left a lot pretty vague to go into the next live letter, whenever that is. I have no idea what Tataru's Grand Endeavor is. Like, right. Is that a side quest series like Hildebrand, which Hildebrand is coming back, or is that a trial series? Like, is that which I think may be the Omega thing they referenced later on.
Yeah, so in what Chris is alluding to, they say that there's going to be Omega Beyond the Rift in terms of a questing series, basically taking the Omega Raid and Ultima Thule and maybe finishing, kind of putting a button, kind of a little cherry on top of that story and those characters. We don't know enough about it to really start to understand. So speculate at your own risk in terms of what that could ultimately be in and of itself. Now, this got me excited, new role quest, because I still haven't finished the role quest for Endwalker. So I'm like, what this made me think of is like, I need to get that done. So that way I can be ready for these new role quests. And then obviously they are starting after the story for Endwalker concludes, which makes perfect sense to add this now. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, as a reminder, there will be no class quest this expansion. They said that they did kind of a wrap-up set last expansion, and that's it. If they add class quests back to the game ever, they would picture those being with new people. It doesn't make sense that you're continuing to learn from the same people, even though you're capable of ending what they are referring to as a whole, the Heidelin Zodiac arc, that whole saga. And so maybe we'd need to learn from new people, but also internally, it'd be time to let new writers take over. It's been a long time. Some stories have had as much as 3 writers on it. So the role quests are a thing worth being excited about. We are also getting our first Beast Tribe. Speaking of which, it is time, based on the narrative, to show a little more respect. Beast Tribe was a way of referring to them as less than. So moving forward from 6.2 in the narrative, lore-wise, it makes sense. We're going to begin just calling them tribal quests. Looking back, because the tone will still be in place, looking back, we're going to keep that historical term the same. They're going to be called Beast. The old ones are going to be called Beast Tribes. The new ones are going to be called tribal quests. We are starting out with the Ark of Sidara. That is our lovely elephant people. And you will need to have completed the 2 quest lines in Thavnir. They're marking those. In the past, it's been really hit or miss on whether or not those will get plus signs. And so just be sure you go look for those and have those done prior to that day if you want to be on track to get that mount like as soon as it's available, assuming it gets a mount reward. And then it may have like a storm sap all over again where it has like a drop that's tied to it that was really valuable.
What mount do you think it would be? I mean, there's a lot of different creatures out in that.
There's some great Thavnir mounts available. Like there's some great characters there. We already have a giraffe mount. We already have an elephant mount. We already have a turtle mount. So I'd hope maybe it's one of the birds, like the fat dodo bird that's in that area, or the little mini turtle shell guy with the goofy flower tail. We already have a gorilla one. If it's tied to a Thavnir zone, it'd be great if it was. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll find out. As Chris alluded earlier, Hildebrand is coming back as the patch is called, or the content's called Somehow Further Hildebrand Adventures. Patch 6.15 is when this is going to be targeted. So just again, speculative off of dates and times, assuming that the obviously the update does hit in mid-April. And if you think of about a 4-month cycle now as a part for the patches, you think about the 0.5 being kind of the midway. So this could technically be about 2 months after. So you're starting to look at June, mid-June, early July for these kind of updates. So when you start seeing 6.5, 6.18, note that you're thinking summertime, for the game itself. And obviously, if you guys weren't aware, Hildebrand has a random chance of showing up in the Heroes Gauntlet in Shadowbringers. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they get to do with him. I'm very excited to see him make a return. I've only finished up to Heavensward, so I've got to get caught up. And right now with 6.5, the fact that he's coming back, that gives me a little time to make sure I can get that knocked out.
Chat's reminding me that we did ride a dodo during the Thavnir quest line. And so there is a chance that maybe they just reuse that mount. Omega Beyond the Rift. Is this our Sorrows of Relit? Is this our trial storyline? Could be. It would make sense. There's some Final Fantasy IV reference material that could be tied to that. It's hard to say. Yeah. Like at this point, they've been super vague about that. And because the story is starting anew, we don't have a natural threat that's looming that feels like, oh, what a great chance for the trials to kind of explore that.
Yeah. A lot of people, myself included, to jump on that. If that ends up being the trial, doing Omega Beyond the Rift gives them the possibility of really introducing any number of trials that don't have to necessarily easily fit, because within the Omega Raid series, we're going to bring in these different fights, which was a lot of fun. And I know for myself, being a Final Fantasy IV, like that was the Final Fantasy that got me hooked on Final Fantasy, and Chat and I were talking live. It'd be really cool, speculative, no confirmation, if they did the 4 Fiends. That would be something that could fit into the narrative, especially because we don't have a 0.3 story-driven trial that finishes off the expansion. All that has been concluded. We don't ultimately know at this point, and we don't know if this is going to be the trial stuff, but I honestly, if it does, I'd be over the moon, because we got the Matoya sisters. I would love to see a little bit more, any and all the little Final Fantasy IV seeds there in the game.
The improvements to main scenario quest we'll go over in part 2 here in just a second. As we get down there, the live letter was really fast, so part 1 and part 2 are there. We are getting a new dungeon. We don't know what it's called. Remember, at this point, that will be enough dungeons. We will go from 3 to 4, so that could mean that the expert roulette comes back, is usually when that comes back, because the expert roulette is the top 2 dungeons, and the level 90 roulette is the bottom 2 dungeons. And then as the expansion rolls on, each time they add a dungeon, the expert continues to be the 2, and whichever one gets pushed out drops down into the level 90 roulette. The trial here is the Endsinger's aria. This is the trial you think it is. It is the final trial of the MSQ. Nothing typical there. As a matter of fact, some expansions, they've kept that blurred out and been like, which trial could it be? And like, there's only one trial in the game that doesn't have an extreme. Like, we know which one. Unreals are back. They took a pause for the 0.0. They said they'd come back. They just needed a pause because the amount of other content that comes in a 0.0 patch versus a standard mid-cycle patch. It will be Ultima's Bane this time around. For anybody that hasn't done those, that means they're going to take Ultima's Bane, they're going to scale it up to level 90, and you will be able to use all of your toolkit and bring it in and bash it down for some fun rewards. And then in 6.2, we'll replace that with a different Unreal, and that one will go away. They have said that once one shows up, they'd like to be able to maybe reintroduce those. So maybe we could have like 2 running, like one that has been an Unreal before and one new one. We don't really know what that looks like. They haven't gotten enough Unreals to kind of show what the second half of their thought process is quite yet.
Mm-hmm. And this is the thing. Oh, dude. Oh, yeah, hands down. So what we're talking about, if you're just listening, is in 6.1, we're getting Myths of the Realm. This is the kickoff for the Alliance raid. For me, as a 1.0 player, the 12 have always been this interesting kind of mystery, and I thought it was going to be more tied into the core story, especially when 1.0, but with the pivot and with the shift and the ARR and everything, that's kind of taken a big back seat. And so now being able to sit down and revisit this and to do it in an Alliance raid, I think is really exciting to see. I think that's some of the best content I've enjoyed in the game thus far, with some rare exceptions, but we don't need to rehash that here. So very much excited for it. You can kind of see some images, give it obviously visuals. You start thinking of the chapel, the wedding chapel out in Gridania. You got these giant eagles holding swords and something going on right here. So that's going to be something really exciting to see and explore finally when that launches here in April.
Now, this is going to be our ultimate that was supposed to be during Shadowbringers, originally 5.3, then 5.5, now 6.11. This will be 2 weeks after the patch date. So once we do get that patch date in April, this will be either at the very end of April or possibly slide into May. We are looking at getting a second ultimate that they have not told us the theme of as early as 6.3. They say they can do it in 6.3. I keep referring to it tentatively, even though their statement was not tentative, because I just don't see how it doesn't like go, oh, wow, out of nowhere it delayed to 0.5. So like I would set your expectation as they're trying, but these have been referred to in the past as some of the most expensive content to develop as far as time and man hours, and that more resources is one of the things that doesn't really help that project along. So it just kind of takes as long as it takes. They have shown these images in the past, these two that Brian's showing now, but we got a new additional image there.
And they said,
I don't think we'd seen in the past.
They said, why the prevalent font? Now this fight is designed by Mr. Ozma. So if those of you know from the battle design, he says that he has given it everything he's got. He's trying to make this, an incredible experience. So they're very much excited to see people dive into that. And so am I. I honestly watch. It's so much fun watching the race on Ultimate to see that. Now, like Chris stated, he called this right at the beginning. Java adjustments are coming. Adjustments, that's the right word. Those are coming, but they're not going to tell us what they are, and that's rightfully so. Usually, anytime they talk about adjustments to jobs, it just leads to stress. Don't stress. We're going to get that information, and they're going to go over it later in more detail when they have that, because the better you going hands-on, it ultimately just works out better for the community.
Remember that an ultimate is tuned for the best in gear that was available at the time that it dropped, which means that you want to be best in slotted going into this ultimate, and past ultimates, your choice is to either go pursue the best in slot from that patch or the dungeon patch that came in later. So, and it's based on the weapon. So right now the best weapon is 605. All of the gear that's available is 600, which means when we get to a dungeon later in the future that has 605 gear, depending on how that stats are laid out, that actually becomes your best in slot. And in theory, the difficulty on those stay preserved forever and ever. And so you can always still go back, and they do what they can to preserve the way UCOB works and all of that. Obviously, as players get better, as new classes get added, as abilities get pruned, like it can't be exactly the same, but their objective is to maintain that, as opposed to something like a trial where they let us go unsynced, and on a blue mage I can one-shot it. Ultimates, you can't ever go in unsynced. So in theory, that is a fourth fight, and then soon to be a fifth fight added to the ranks of Uwu, UCOB, and T. So very exciting there. Yeah. PvP is a massive update, guys.
And the fact that it's coming in 6.1, my concern this whole time is that it would be 6.15, which would just push it further out. This is where we're getting our big updates to the Crystalline Conflict. This is replacing the Feast. The Feast is going away. Crystalline Conflict's coming in. This is small scale, aka 5v5. It's going to be kind of almost in a way, of the Overwatch style. There's an objective, and there's also the deathmatch that's happening. PvP action improvements and adrenaline rush actions are going to be applied to each job. A new PvP reward system. This is the Battle Pass. It is something that you can earn currency that you can use across. So as for previous events, new events. So if you don't feel like, that getting engaged, you don't have to. Plus, you don't have to purchase the Battle Pass, as it is included as a part of the subscription. So it's just a reward structure that I honestly think they're testing out and seeing how people engage with it, because it's become the language of kind of PvP games as a part of that reward track. And so we're going to see that. And then the nice thing about it is that all PvP is going to end up having this seasonal and this sessional, there's a seasonal and then there's a series type reward track, so that everything's kind of benefiting you in terms of your PvP profile. So I'm very excited to see some unification with those systems.
They're looking at a way to maybe make the Garo stuff come back as one of the most commonly asked questions in the thoughts of that. They're not sure if they'll be able to, because there's some licensing stuff there, but they are looking into possibly bringing Garo back for another round. Those of you that do custom deliveries, sometimes we can dress them up. So there's been there was some things said in the main chat there that showed that maybe not everybody wants to dress Emeliance up respectfully. But we will see if we will get to enjoy the Love Your Mansion weekly and go in and do those deliveries. Custom deliveries are an incredible way to get experience and get scripts and all of that. So if you haven't been doing those, this could be a good chance to do that. In Shadowbringers, we even got one that dropped a mount for us, which was really neat. Ishgard housing, we are moving to all lottery all the time, which means existing wards. If I were to give my personal house up, or if we were to give our free company house up, it would go to being a lottery ward. In addition to that, each ward is going to be assigned to being, I believe, free company or solo is how they phrased it, which means that if my ward gets labeled as free company, I won't be kicked out of my house, but if I leave, it will go into a lottery system, and the lottery pool will be available with free companies.
Yes. And one of the things also tied into what they announced when they announced PvP changes, the adventure plates. This is going to be a new profile display feature. They used to call it calling cards, but it's now adventure plates. It gives you customized character portraits and so much more. And that's also coming in patch 6.1.
Those will be tied to your individual gear sets and stuff. So it seems like you're going to have multiple for different jobs. They described it in the past as having backgrounds that we'd be able to unlock some. There'll be some available. So we don't know exactly what it looks like. He couldn't show anything off today. He was hoping he could at least have a screenshot or something, but it's still kind of a moving target. They'll have more about that in this second live letter.
Yes. And then we get the Unending Codex. This is being added to the collections, the ability for you to kind of go and collect information about the various NPCs, allowing you, it's a collection minigame in and of itself, but it's kind of its own ethos in game in a way. Like if you're ever kind of curious as to who that character is, and any kind of bits of story, probably not as detailed as Ethos, but it's still pretty cool to start to see this stuff come in, because at some point you're like, oh man, I haven't, especially if you've been on a break for a long time, like, wait, who is that character again? Right. Let me go see if
who is the Warring Triad. People keep saying, wouldn't it be cool if we had a Warring Triad Ultimate? And I don't want to ask publicly who it is. Can I just look that up? Because it's been too long. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this is essentially representing a glossary of characters and terms up through patch 6.0, unlocked in the main scenario of patch 6.1 and added to your collection with new entries added to as the story unfolds. So it is a piece of content that opens up as you finish Endwalker's story. But then I wonder if it ends up becoming such a kind of a rich piece of content that they end up bringing it backwards. But we'll see.
I think it probably came off of positive feedback around things like the Yorha system, where you could kind of build out this lore. So I don't know if it's something we'll actively collect, or if every piece is just going to be handed to us as we complete quests, or how detailed that'll be. Exciting stuff.
Absolutely. And data center travel coming patch 6.18. Again, time-wise, thinking July and August, that's right around the time they're talking about more data centers. They even go into detail about the Japanese data center logical restructure with the different worlds. So that's going to, that's something they go over. But just note, that's when they're targeting that system along those same kind of lines.
6.2, we're looking at kind of that August timeframe, because what we're looking at is 4 months plus 1 week. There's 1 week in the summer now for the devs to take off. So there is 4 months plus 1 week. So once we get a 6.1 date, we know that we're targeting roughly 4 months and 1 week for 6.2. 6.18 is kind of just meant to be a patch to test all that stuff out. Parts of the data center visit that we'll go over in a bit are tied to 6.2. So once it's stable, there's still more to come, but let's just get it working. This is how World Visit was rolled out as well. And I think that's a really good way to do that. So with 6.1, we also get a chance to replay Endwalker now. So 6.0 and parts of 6.1 entered New Game Plus there. The Rothgar hairstyles, I believe those are still going to be tied behind Fantasia, but you will have more Rothgar hairstyles. They're working on that. And then the glamour plates. This is a massive change.
Mm-hmm.
We're moving to 5 additional glamour plates. And in 6.2, we're going to move from 400 items in the chest to 800 items in the chest. So this is a big, big change to the way glamour is going to feel. As far as the number of plates, it's still not where I'm sure everybody, they want more, But remember that when Yoshi went over like the longer plan back in the past, he said there was 2 parts. First, we're going to update the amount of glamour that people can get, but we're hoping to do a more massive overhaul that we will talk on a later date. So it does look like behind the scenes, hopefully they're working on something that streamlines it. So we're not just continually trying to stave off people saying, I need more, I need more. We're also getting this new dream fitting feature, which Yoshi P said was controversial. I think it's controversial. He didn't want to implement it. I don't really like the idea of it being a game. It is what it is. I know there's other people that are excited about it. So it's definitely going to be a polarizing issue. This is the ability from when you are in an inn, while your glamour plates will now be changeable anywhere with the crescent moon, any sanctuary. So they're going to more places. The dream fitting is going to be available in an inn. And this is the ability to try on items from the store in game. So this is the blurring of that line that Yoshi has always said, I do not want to have a mount collection screen or anything that makes people feel like anything above a base level subscription is not enough in this game. And so this is the beginning of blurring those lines where you're beginning to tie features into the game that start to say, the subscription is great, but that.
Right.
Cash shop.
And
Cash
the
shop,
speculation, and I don't have confirmation that the blue button would be like, oh, go view this actually in the Mog station, which then essentially is just like who are we kidding? If you're just in here, like Square Enix has struggles selling you the game itself anyway. So ultimately, the speculation that we wonder is this just, like the step before they're just like, well, let's just add it into the game. And personally speaking, I think ultimately the player base would be fine with it. Like just be and then essentially it's like, yeah, it's a cash shop. Like that's what MMOs have. It's like, okay, Roger. So then obviously new idle animations for Paracels along other miscellaneous updates. We've got checkmark displayed items used to obtain minions, mounts, etc. is already acquired. Improved market search, and to highlight the market search changes, a new filter so you can actually filter out, especially if you like, hey, I've already got this, I don't need this. Yep. This is awesome. I think this is really exciting to see, especially
tab.
Yeah, it's like,
on
let's
the bottom
go.
Left. Mounts, minions, parasols, and orchestrion scrolls all right there. So there's right now you can't search by mounts. So you'll be able to search the mount category and then have check marks and then filter off everything that you've already obtained.
Yeah, exactly. So this is just really exciting to see. And that's going to, I wonder if that's going to apply outside of the markets. Cause sometimes when I see like an item drop in game, I'm like, wait, do I have that? Like, do I need, okay. I'll tell you if you try to roll on it. It'd be nice to be like, I don't even need to roll on it. We're good to go. So then they took, I think their break around this time, right? Is there anything I'm missing on that 15-minute break? They showed off a really cool video about the projection lighting, but is there anything before we move into the second part of this, Chris?
They did show the 30th anniversary from 2017, the light show. I think that was up on their YouTube page. So I think that's where they pulled it from. So that was pretty cool. And then we went into part 2. Part 2 is going to go in detail on what's changing about A Realm Reborn and what's changing about Data Center Visit and the update on the server migration, mostly focused on the JP. But like, it's important that we all know how this stuff works so that any part of it that affects our region, we'll know what the pattern is. So they are splitting the trust system up. Right now, the trust system is used to describe the thing when you get to a dungeon for the first time and they say, hey, would you like to run this with us instead of other people? And it's used to describe the avatar leveling system. And there's kind of 2 tabs in there. And so now trust is only going to be used as a term to refer to the avatar leveling system. And when you get to a dungeon, you can run it with NPCs is now called the duty support system. The duty support system is being rolled out for all 2.0 MSQ dungeons only that are 4-man only at this time. With patch 6.2, we will add the 2.x in the beginning of Heavensward dungeons. With 6.3, we will add all of Heavensward support. With 6.4 and 5, somewhere in there, there's Stormblood. And in 7.0, they'd like to go back and possibly tackle some of the 8-man MSQ content. But the MSQ content, that means no Cutter's Cry, no Arum Vale, no Dazamal Darkhold, no Temple of Karn. Like all those optional dungeons, they will not be included as we get to those throughout this expansion. It's just like a squadron system in that it is Adventurers Guild people, kind of like a free company member or a grand company member, not not actual like story NPCs. So I know people wanted like Hori Boulder, people wanted to be able to bring, you know, all the Scions along. They had said, hey, that'd be kind of hard to tackle. It looks like they've just shied away from that entirely. So I know there will be some people disappointed in that. Overall, this is a huge leap forward for the game.
Yeah, this also looks like a bigger overhaul for the squadron system, which they've purposely held off on updating. So I wonder if ultimately we see, within given enough time, that we see that system just kind of blend in to this system. But we really don't know yet at this point. I don't know if you will expect to see further squadron updates with the support duty, but we could. We'll see.
Cool.
Like,
I could at least bring them along cosmetically, my squadron members, even if they don't get experience or something.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that too, for sure.
I have one that wears a reindeer suit, and that would really brighten up cutscenes.
So then they start getting into some of the real like nitty-gritty details about what is supported. So you can see here it's all the MSQ story dungeons. So things like Arm Vale, not supported. Like those are all off on the side. Those are going to require a party. But if you need the dungeon to get through the story, it's going to be required. And then it starts having you ask the questions about what about Cape Westwind? What about Castor Meridium? What about Praetorium? Chris, why don't you break that down?
So Cape Westwind is going away altogether. It's going to be a solo scenario that you do, which honestly, like the fact that a new player has to wait through a 25-minute DPS queue to get into something that effectively is a solo quest battle anyway is kind of just insulting to the new player. And so I think this is a good thing. Overall, I know people love the memes. Castor Meridium is dropping to 4-player, and it is going to set the tone for how long MSQ questions take. We don't know if the cutscenes become skippable. The Praetorium is being broken into 3 parts. Basically, the beginning through the Gaius portion, and then the Ultima battle, and then everything after that's going into solo MSQ, giving us a total of 3 dungeons, where there used to be kind of 3 dungeons, but Cape Westwind's going away, and 2 will be Praetorium. That will be the basis of our new main scenario roulette. The main scenario roulette will have its rewards tuned to be more in line with how long these are going to take now, because they're not going to be an hour. It's going to be much shorter because we're cutting down the amount of time you spend in Prey. So I think that's a big move forward in a positive direction. I know there are people that like that from a source of experience. To kind of get in front of that, I'm going to start kind of trying to show you guys all the sources of experience in game. I put a guide up on Gaming Kinda yesterday for where there's over 3 million experience a day available from 80 to 90. So like, guys, there is a lot of experience in this game to be had, a lot more than you need. The only reason any of us, me and Brian included, are not Omni 90 is because we just haven't done it. It's not because it's not available. The MSQ Roulette was rewarding lots of experience because they were saying thank you for watching an hour of unskippable cutscenes. But experience per hour, it really was exceedingly average compared to things like Leveling Roulette, PvP Roulette, Hunts, Pixie Dailies, and so on.
All right, and then we get into the data travel. This is going to have the same restrictions as World Visit. It's going to allow you to pick a logical data center within your region. So NA can play with NA, EU can play with EU. So you will still have to make another character on another data center if you want to have that level of crossover and connection. But they go into it. They talk about how certain things like the company chat, cross-world link shell chat, PvP teams are restricted using DC travel, especially like if you're in a cross-world link shell and you go over to a data center, you're still going to be in the link shell. You're just not going to be able to chat. But you can join a cross-world link shell within another data center and be able to chat.
As of 6.2.
Yeah, as of 6.2. Thank you very much. And so I thought that was just ultimately interesting. Yeah, 6.2 will be possible to join on the other data center that you're on. So that way you can kind of chat within that ecosystem. And then you would actually go into the same queue to transfer back to your home data center if you so choose to do so.
This works a lot like a character transfer. So basically, you're going to say you want to travel from the character select screen. It's going to take you back to the main screen, and then you're not going to be able to stop it, and off you go. And you are over there. Now, this is just like packing your bags and going to another country. So you don't want to now think back when you didn't want it, like you don't want to have an international calling plan and stuff. So communication wise, you're not going to be in the new place, and you have a local phone and you can call local people, but you can't call your family back home. And so it is separate. They are separate machines. Now, the beauty of the region thing is like in NA, for example, all of our servers are in the same building. So your ping will stay the same. They've talked about exploring maybe the ability to jump across the pond and all that. That would be a later date, if at all. Once you are there, you're there. And then you have to follow the same process to get back home. While you're there, you'll have access to everything that those players would there, except that just like when you're world visiting, you don't have access to your retainers. So you can't sell things, but you can buy things. And so it's very, very similar. You can't store things in your retainer because you don't have access to those. At the same time, they went ahead and talked about data center migrations. This is important because anytime in the future they have to do data center migrations, we want to know what their kind of policies and history with this has been. So even though this is just JP, this affects everybody. Japanese, as it sits, the Japanese servers, there's 3 data centers, but unlike the NA data centers, they actually have 11, 11, and 10 worlds, which means that the bottleneck is not the number of characters that the game can hold, not even the number of characters that can be currently logged in, but the number that can actually get through the login queue. So to fix that, they're moving to a 4th data center, and they're actually migrating over, but they're doing this after the data center visit. So if somebody on Ramu got transferred off of Elemental, if they have their statics on Ramu, and that all stays the same, they'll go over to Ramu, their whole free company and all that goes over, that's fine. But they had a friend on Carbuncle they ran treasure maps with on Friday, that's fine, because when this rolls out, they'll be able to jump back across. But what that means is they're probably in a cross-world link shell with that friend on Carbuncle, and cross-world link shells are going to break. So what that's going to do is it's automatically going to duplicate that entire crossword link shell with its entire list. So they've got 4 people in and now we're going to have and we're going to move over C and D because they're affected by the migration. And that means that when they visit, their place will be held in that crossworld link shell, and they'll be able to speak with them, and vice versa. So if A comes over to Meteor, they can play with them. The crossworld link shell will be intact, but that while they are on their home worlds, it will show those other 2 members as unavailable. And so that is kind of how that's going to work. And that's important to know because it gives us insight into how it'll work on our own servers. And as they continue to update NA and EU, if they, as they move worlds around and as they add new data centers, what does that look like if my friend group gets fractured?
Right. And then it talks about as a part of the transfer, this is something we went through when we had to do the data shuffle for NA and in EU. So if you end up losing a home, you're going to be reimbursed the full price of said home. You're also being reimbursed 3 million gil for items containing within that home. But as we've always stated here within the home system, it's not a money issue, it's a resource issue. And with the system being full lottery, that's going to cause a little bit of stress, a little bit of frustration for some players who want to try and get a home through this process. But they will be offering server transfers as well for free, so that way everybody can kind of figure out where they want to go. And just like we showed here on this video, like if you're a part of those data centers and worlds, you can see and start making your planning now for this to happen late July, sometime in August. That's kind of essentially where that is going on. And then I think we start getting into announcements. Is that right, Chris?
Yep. So Little Ladies Day is back on March 14th, right? And I don't remember what we got from that last time. And then they're hiring French and German translators. So if any of you want to go do that, either as a contract employee or freelance, those are up. They talked about in the last live that they're aware that different employment suits people differently. So as they try to staff up, they're trying to staff up in whatever way works best for you. And that is what a normal live letter looks like. They're in all Japanese. They are just a couple hours long, and they come in 2 parts. The second part will show more gameplay and more detail on the bigger changes because they will have already gone over the typical stuff like MSQ and stuff they're not going to tell us about, and we know how it works.
Yeah.
And so we'll get a chance to maybe dive into some of those PvP changes. With 6.2, that's when we'll start the relic stuff. We'll start Island Sanctuary. We'll go into those Criterion dungeons that we don't know anything about. And hopefully the part 2s going into 6.2 will show us about those. And then we go into 6.3. Part 2 will be used to accent things like Deep Dungeon and so on. We know Blue Mage is getting updated this expansion. We don't know when. So there's the part 2s are usually when they get a chance to show us some of the stuff that directly affects that. Keep in mind that hopefully around that 0.3 time frame, we're starting to talk about things like FanFest.
Yeah.
And so there is a lot as we get back into the typical coverage here that is a shift from the 10-year live letter as well as the build up to an expansion for all these new players, the 5 million new players that came in literally. So hopefully this was a fun and great way to learn about what's upcoming in the game.
So for me, guys, I think this is a great live letter. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to get this edited and posted over to Work to Game, and then I'm going to play some Triangle Strategy over on Twitch. So if you watch this whole live letter summary from us and you want to come see what Triangle Strategy is all about, I got a video posted on Ginger Prime about it, but I'm going to be playing it live here on Twitch, going hard mode. I'm going to have some good fun with it. So I don't know if Chris will be able to hold the stream up for the little bit while I edit, but we'll figure it out.
March 7th, yes. I am starting an ARR replay through, and I'm going to try to beat ARR, paying attention to story in 4 days. March 7th through 11th, starting at 8 a.m. Central. March 12th, we are going to have a memorial. We are still working on finalizing the time. We think it's going to be kind of in the afternoon,
2
Central
p.m.
Standard
Central.
Time. And at our free company house over on Sargatanas, you're welcome to create a character on Aether and kind of come join us. And that is a memorial for our community manager, Rock Druid. Many of you have known, who have passed through the community, have known and interacted with him and everything that he has meant to this community over the last several years. And so he passed away recently. And so we do want to pay our respect in that way. If you'd like to be a part of that, that's where we'll be. I think that's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of this community. It's just such a wonderful time. And especially as we unfortunately announced Rock's passing, that we all are so coming together. You guys, like, he was at 50 subscribers on YouTube. He was making his little YouTube videos before he got sick, and then you guys pushed him to like 1,300 subscribers. I haven't even checked it if it's gone up since then. So thank you guys so much for sending him such positive messages, within that space. And so we'll be sure to honor his life. And so we appreciate that, guys. For Work to Game, my name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. We love you, and hopefully you have a great day. We'll hopefully see you next time. But until then,
take care.